The rain didn't fall in drops. It fell in sheets of gray, blurring the neon lights of the city into bleeding smears of color. Elias walked the bridge every night at 11 p.m., his footsteps a rhythmic, lonely metronome against the pavement. He liked the rain. It drowned out the intrusive ticking of the clocks that filled his empty home. But tonight, the rhythm was broken. There, leaning dangerously far over the rusted iron railing, was a girl who looked no older than 20. She wasn't crying. Her face was unnervingly still, her eyes fixed on the churning black throat of the river below. Most people would have screamed or called the police. Elias simply stopped and pulled an old, silver stopwatch from his coat pocket. "I'm giving you 20 minutes, he said, his voice raspy but steady. The girl didn't flinch, but her grip on the railing tightened. "Go away," she whispered, the sound barely rising above the wind. "I have no interest in stopping you," Elias lied, though his heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. "But I have 20 minutes of life left in this watch before I head home. It would be a waste to spend them alone. Give me those 20 minutes. If you still want the river after that, I won't stand in your way." The girl finally looked at him, her eyes hollow and dark. She looked at the watch, then back at the abyss. Slowly, she stepped down. They sat in a corner booth of a diner that smelled of burnt coffee and old regrets. The fluorescent lights overhead flickered with a rhythmic hum, casting a clinical glow over Maya's pale features. Elias placed a silver stopwatch on the formica tabletop between them. With a deliberate click of his thumb, the thin red hand began its nervous crawl. 19 minutes, 40 seconds, Elias murmured. Maya stared at the device as if it were a ticking bomb. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling now that the adrenaline of the bridge was fading into a cold, hollow shiver. "You don't even know my name." "Names are labels for the world outside," Elias replied, wrapping his weathered hands around a thick ceramic mug. "In here, in this pocket of time, you're just a soul in a storm. Tell me, what does a nothing feel like? The heaviness that makes a river look like a soft bed." Maya flinched. No one had ever asked about the weight. They only ever spoke of the why. She began to speak, slowly at first, then in a frantic rush, about the crushing invisibility of her life, the way her dreams had turned to ash, and the terrifying realization that she had become a ghost before she had even died. She spoke of a world that moved too fast, leaving her pinned under the wreckage of her own expectations. Elias watched her, his eyes reflecting a deep, knowing sorrow that suggested he had walked that same dark hallway many times before. The watch clicked. 15 minutes remained. The diner's jukebox began to hum a low, melancholic blues track, but it couldn't drown out the relentless click-click-click of the stopwatch. Maya's confession had left her breathless, her fingers tracing the jagged edges of a chipped sugar shaker. She looked up at Elias, her eyes narrowing as she noticed he hadn't taken a single sip of his coffee. "And you?" she challenged, her voice gaining a sharp, defensive edge. "You're sitting there acting like a judge. What's your story? Old man, why are you wandering bridges in the middle of a storm?" Elias went stiff. He reached out and touched the glass of the stopwatch, his thumb hovering over the reset button but never pressing it. "I spent 40 years fixing time," he said softly. "I believed that if I could keep the gears moving, I could control the world. But 10 years ago, time cheated me. My daughter was waiting for me at a crosswalk. I was late, exactly 3 minutes late, because I was obsessing over a stubborn grandfather clock in the shop." He looked at Maya, and for the first time, she saw the cracks in his stoic mask. The watch on the table, it belonged to her. It stopped on impact. I spent 3 years trying to repair it, but some things aren't meant to be fixed. They are only meant to be carried. Maya looked at the stopwatch again. It wasn't just a tool for her countdown anymore. It was a fragment of a dead girl's life. The silence between them grew heavy, no longer awkward, but shared. The red hand swept past 12. 9 minutes left. The atmosphere in the diner shifted as the weight of Elias's grief settled over the booth. Maya reached out, her hand hovering just inches from the stopwatch, no longer seeing it as a countdown to her end, but as a testament to his endurance. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the words feeling small against the magnitude of his loss. "Don't be," Elias said, his voice regaining its sandpaper grip. "Pity is just another way of looking away. I didn't tell you that to earn your tears. I told you because you think your life is a vacuum. You think if you disappear, the world simply closes a gap. He leaned forward, the shadows under his eyes deepening. But look at that waitress. He gestured to a woman behind the counter, her face etched with exhaustion, her hands shaking as she fumbled with a stack of plates. A loud crash echoed through the diner as a saucer shattered at her feet. She froze, her eyes welling with tears of pure, overwhelmed frustration. The few other patrons looked away, annoyed by the noise. "Go," Elias commanded quietly. "You have 5 minutes of my time left. Don't give them to me. Give them to her." Maya hesitated, her social anxiety clawing at her throat. But the sight of the woman's silent breakdown mirrored her own internal chaos so perfectly that she couldn't stay seated. She stood up, walked across the checkered floor, and knelt in the shards of porcelain. Without a word, she began to help the woman pick up the pieces, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared human frailty. For the first time in months, Maya felt the solid warmth of another person's hand as a waitress gripped her arm in a silent thank you. Maya looked back at the booth. Elias was watching the stopwatch. 1 minute remained. The final 60 seconds felt longer than the entire night. Maya returned to the booth, her knees dusty and her heart pounding with a strange, forgotten electricity. She sat down just as the red hand of the stopwatch made its final, jerky rotation toward the 12. Click! The timer hit 0. The silence that followed wasn't the heavy, suffocating silence of the bridge. It was the quiet of a room after a storm has passed. Maya looked at the silver watch, then at the door, then back at Elias. The deal was over. The 20 minutes he had given her had expired. "Time's up," Elias said. He didn't move to grab the watch. He didn't stand up to lead her back to the bridge. He just sat there, breathing. "What happens now?" Maya asked, her voice small but clear. "The watch is broken, Maya. It's been broken for 10 years, Elias revealed, a faint, sad smile touching his lips. "I never wound it. I was moving the hands with my thumb under the table the whole time." Maya gasped, realizing the clockwork was just a man's way to keep her talking. "You think you're out of time," Elias continued, sliding the watch across the table toward her. "But time isn't something you run out of. It's something you choose to inhabit. I can't give you a reason to live, but I can tell you that the 21st minute is usually where the light starts to change." Maya picked up the cold metal. She realized she didn't want to go back to the railing. The world was still loud, and her heart was still heavy, but she was no longer a ghost. She was a girl holding a broken watch, sitting with a broken man, in a world that was suddenly, vividly real. Elias stood up, adjusted his coat, and walked toward the door. He didn't look back, knowing that the girl who walked out after him wouldn't be the same one he found in the rain. She had survived the countdown. Now, she just had to survive the rest of her life, 1 minute at a time.